All right, here is another Grow with Google how-to video walkthrough explanation of some of the resources that Google has available that we can kind of share with you. Today is going to go, I'm going to go over another service called Google Sheets, also known as kind of like Excel spreadsheets. It would be kind of like Google's competitor to Microsoft spreadsheets. Today I'm going to kind of show you the basics of what it is, and then a few examples of how it can be used a little bit. We'll just go over the core basics so you can get introduced to that. If you have additional questions, by all means, go ahead and get a hold of us. I'd be happy to help you out. So what is a spreadsheet? So a spreadsheet is a way to look at pieces of data, specifically numbers. Most often it's usually going to be numbers, and it's a way to visually represent and organize data such as numbers with a program. And most of us are probably used to Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. Well, Google has come out with their own version called Google Sheets, and today I'm going to walk you through a few examples and give you a tour and things like that. So first things first, as always, like I've shown you in previous video, well, how do we create a new document? In today's case, it's going to be a sheet. All I have to do is click that new button there. And then I can go down here and I have my choice of a document, Google Docs or Google Slides, which is what we went over in the previous video. And then today is Sheets. So if I wanted to create a new Google Sheet, I would click New, and then I would choose Google Sheets. But because I've already created a few examples today, I've already created one. So we're going to go ahead and go to that. Now, before I get started, I want to give you a quick tour of what is what, and then I'm going to give you a few examples of how it works and how one can use it. One of the many ways a person can use it. So for starters, up on the top left, as always, that's where your title goes. And it's one of the most important things to do right away once you start your document. And today I just titled it Spreadsheet Example so I can find it, but always remember that. Next, you're going to have your menu bar, as always, same as Google Docs, same as Google Slides. All of that information is here. So you have your file, your edit, your view, and like I've said in previous videos, the best way for you to get accommodated or used to this program, especially with these menu bars and stuff, is to go in, play around, and see what they can all do. Now, what I'm going to go over today is not going to cover all of these things and all of these additional tools you see, but it's going to go over the basics. So again, that's why I suggest, when you're trying out these services and these programs, to take the time and to learn them and to practice them and get used to them. So that is the menu bar where you have your file, your edit, your view. You can insert things, charts, images. You can have even themes, and you can sort things, and we'll get into some of that here in a little bit. And then after that, we have our toolbar, which is this section here, this last line of icons and things like that. You have your undo and your redo. You can print things. There's a formatting thing that you can play with. You can change your zoom if the text is too small. You can change how close it is zoomed into. I just usually leave it at 100% for myself. You can format things as currency. You can format things as percentages. If you have 23.32, that could be a percentage, or you could format it as as actual money. And you can move decimal points. There's other formatting options you have here. And then also remember, similar to Google Docs, you have your fonts. You have your size of your font, like how large the text is. You have your bold, italicize, and you can even put a line through things. I can change the color of text. As you can see, you're starting to see the similarities between Google Docs, Google Slides, and Google Sheets, where those same tools are starting to get a little more consistent. You're starting to see the repetition of those things. So we go into these here a little bit, and then you can change the color, like I said. You can change the fill color, which what that is, for example, let's say I have this box highlighted. I can change what is behind it. That's what they're talking about, a fill color, but we'll get into that here in a little bit. Also too, you have some borders where you can actually add borders to um, some of these boxes here, which we will also get into. You have your formatting of how the text is aligned and all these things. You can insert links, comments, charts, you can filter things. That's what all of this is for that toolbar. But for you to really see what all this can do, or at least the core basics of what this can do, I'm going to show you a few different examples of how people may use a spreadsheet, and then how we can manipulate that data, how we can collect data, and all that stuff. So for my first one, I wanted to start with something as simple as an example for the first one to keep things really simple. So I'm going to do a to-do list, and I've already kind of prepped one a little bit. But as you can see, everything is inside a little box. And what that box is actually called, like the correct terminology is called a cell. So I have a cell here and a cell here and a cell here, and I can move all around here. So in each cell will hold information. Sometimes it'll be text. Very often it will be numbers. But in this case, for my example, I'm just doing a simple to-do list. So I can show you how to format and move things around and so on and so forth. So um, on my first row here, I have the name of task and I have the level of urgency for my to-do list. So the name of my task is that I have to hand in worksheets, and let's say the urgency is high, okay? And then I have the Google video that I have to make. I can put the urgency as mid, and I can say go for a walk. I could say go get groceries, all that stuff. I could put get more toothpaste, things like that. So, and I can change the urgency. I can make it low or whatever. So this is just one way of doing it. Um, and let's see here, I'll put this one high. For some reason, I need toothpaste really bad. So this looks all fine and dandy. I have my like to-do list here, and this is one way to use it. But let's say if I want to make it a little more visually appealing, or maybe make it a little more useful or quicker to use. Instead of doing urgency, let's say if I want it to be a certain color, it means that's how urgent it is. So I'm going to highlight this whole row here, or even I'll just highlight these two cells by clicking and dragging. I can go in and I will change the fill color to red, because red is kind of an urgent color, okay? And I'll change this urgency row here to status, all right? And we'll say that this one is not finished, so, okay. Or I could even say pending, all right? I can make this, being that this is mid, let's say I wanna change the color to more of a yellow. So I can do that. This low will make that like a, uh, a green, and then this one is red. So we have all that figured out, and then we can change the status to like finished, or we can do pending, or we can do not started. As you can see, there's many ways that you can format these cells and adjust things the way you want to, so that way you can have like a to-do list. And this applies for always. You can format things via, if you want them bold or italicized, like I mentioned before. You can change the way they align by highlighting a cell, changing the alignment. I can have all of my stuff here on the right-hand side. And like I said before, a lot of this, as you can see here, there are many different ways to do the same thing. I can apply all of these stylings to an entire column or an entire row. It just kind of depends up to you. And keep in mind too, if any of this might be over your head, keep in mind that this is probably one of the more challenging programs out of all the things we're going to go over. Spreadsheets are probably the most like high-end, high-tech versions of programs that you're going to have access to in the Google Suite. So take time with it, practice it, play with it, just mess with it, and you're going to learn a lot. But anywho, so that's a really simple and easy example of how Excel spreadsheets or Google Sheets works. So now let's get a little bit more complicated, okay? So we're gonna go beyond formatting and organizing text and things like that. I'm gonna get into maybe like charts, okay? So let's say if I'm doing an experiment or if I'm counting something for each day, okay? I've kind of prepped a bit of a chart here or a bit of a sheet here on how to do that. So I'm going to quick give my two headings here. I'm going to give them a fill so that way they kind of stand out. All right. So as you can see, each day is labeled as day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and I want to. Oh, one second. We got a chat here. So as I mentioned before, I have my day 1, my day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and I wanted to track some data and then create a chart out of that data. So let's say I'm keeping track how many times I drank water. Many ounces. How does that sound? How many ounces of water drank? Okay. So let's say on day 1, I drank 12 ounces. Day 2, I drank 30 ounces. Day 3, I only drank 5 ounces. Day 4, I drank 60. And day 5, I drank 90. Okay. All right. So I have my data collected, but how do we create that into a visual representation to show changes over time, or at least a comparison of days? All Excel programs or spreadsheet programs, they have the ability to create charts, and I'll show you how Google does that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight all my data here by clicking and dragging, and I'm going to go insert, and I'm going to click chart. Okay. Now it actually generated a chart for me based off of the data that I put in there. Okay. And what's really nice about this, and here I'm gonna move this right here. Okay, and we're gonna move that over. And let's say, you know, well here, before we even go any further, I can explain this to you here. So we have our chart and it's pulling data from day 1 and it's basing everything off of the numbers that we put in here. So let's say if I change one of these, like day 3, let's say if it wasn't 5, let's say it was 50, it changes that automatically on the chart. So it's pulling that data and creating a chart out of it based off of the real data and the real-time data that I have in these cells here. So let's say if this chart looks nice, but I want to change some things. Let's say the date or the title is wrong. I can go in and I can do how many ounces of water drank over time or over 5 days. I can double click that and it will let me mess with this. And also too, when you double click in here, you have this setup where you can mess with like what type of chart. You can make it a line chart. You can make it an area line chart. You can do how many ounces of, or you can do a column chart. You can do all sorts of things. You can do pie charts and all sorts of things. So again, like I've mentioned before, the biggest thing that you can do as far as learning these programs is going in and playing around and trying out different things. So that's how you can mess with some of the chart information. You also have customize. So you can change the style where I can change border colors, background colors. I can change fonts. I can make it 3D if I want to. I can maximize it. I can do like a comparison mode if you have the correct data in there. You can add legends and things like that. The horizontal axis, you can change, you know, how wide, and the vertical axis, you can change like what the minimum and maximum value is and things like that. So you can really mess with this data quite a bit to visually represent information that you've either collected or found or anything like that. So and like I said before, play with how this program works. All right, so that is another example. Now I would like to share with you another really useful way to use Google Sheets, or to a good way to create a spreadsheet or another useful way to use it. So I've kind of lightly prepped a budget, a very, very simple budget. So as you can see here, this Excel spreadsheet is like, all right, so we can have our date, in this column. We have our transaction description in this column, and then we have our amount of the transaction in this column. So let's say if I want to keep track of how much money that I've spent, there's some really easy ways to do that, as well as even see your total, your totals to be automatically generated. And I'll show you kind of how that all works. So let's start with our paycheck. Let's say I got $2,000, and then I went out and I purchased some groceries for $30.23. Okay. I'll go ahead and plop that in there, and then I'll put a negative in front of it. Okay, which means I minus $30. I subtracted $30. I'll go in and go ahead and add, I'll do gas. Let's say that was a minus $25.21. And then my water bill was a high one. It was 70 bucks, 70 bucks even. Okay. But how do I use this data that I put together with dates, descriptions, and amounts? How do I put it together to where I can see, well, how much money do I have right now? How do I know that, this information is correct, and how does it automatically generate the result for me? So there's a really cool thing called formulas or equations, depending on what program you're using. I believe this is called, functions. Functions is what they call it, is the correct terminology. So what I'm going to do, I want all of this data to be summed up into this cell. So I always know when I come to this at the top of my spreadsheet, I'll see my final result, or my sum of like how much money I currently have at the current moment. So I'm going to have this cell highlighted, and I'm going to click Insert, and I'm going to click Function. And then as you can see, there's a ton of functions. And what these are just basically equations that take your data, and it can do all sorts of things. For basic users, it can create like a sum. It can average out a set of numbers. It can count things for you. And there's so much more. And again, this is probably the most complicated program in the Google Suite, but it has a lot of capabilities. There's so many things that you can do. And like I said, go ahead and play around it. And if you want to learn more, by all means, go ahead and reach out to me, and we can go a little further. So like I said before, we're going to insert a function, and it's going to be the sum. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab everything from here, because I'm going to have future entries. I'm going to grab from here, and this entire section is going to be summed up. So for those of you who want to be power users, you can actually type the equation equals sum parentheses C3 colon C21, which basically means it's going to sum from C21 all the way up to C3, okay? But for those of you who don't want to actually type it, you can use the way that I just previously showed you. So I have my sum figured out, and as soon as I press enter, there is my actual total. So let's say I have this all set up, and this is where this program, or using it this way, can become really powerful for you. So I'm going to put in another transaction on 4/7/2020. Let's say we have the electricity bill, okay, and it was minus $80, okay? $80.20 will be more exact. Now I'm going to press enter and watch really closely this total right here. Notice that it changes automatically because I added a new item in this sum field, in this, technically the equation or this function. So it's a really, really nice program, really useful for those of you who want to have like an electronic budget program. This is a really simple and easy way to do it. And again, if you're interested in this or you want to go further, you have additional questions, by all means, go ahead and reach out to me. So like I said before, this is more of a complicated program maybe for some. So if you have questions, or if you're a little overwhelmed, start simple. Make to-do lists, or even do counts, and at most maybe make a chart or something like that. But just know that this program is something that you have available that will allow you to organize, and understand, and even present data in a much in a much more easier fashion, basically. So that is all I have for Google Spreadsheets. I would really like to invite you to the next couple weeks of our Grow with Google series, because we're about to start getting into we're going to get into some really, really fun programs. I believe next week, I think, is going to be our Google Photos series. I'm not sure, but the next ones on the list are like Google Photos, which is huge for those of you who run out of room on your phones and hate losing prized photos. For those of you who are interested in website design or website creation, there's a free tool out there that Google has. There's also Google Drawings, there's Google Forms, which is a great way to collect data. We're going to be going over these really fun, useful tools in the next coming weeks. So I really strongly suggest, everybody get on board with those especially. So again, if you have any questions, by all means, reach out and ask questions to me or Ms. Fonsheim or Ms. Christie, and we will be more than glad to help you out. All right.